Most people enter early childhood education because they love working with children. But as any teacher, director, or owner knows, caring for children is only part of the job. The other part is the constant documentation, communication, planning, and administrative follow-up that quietly drains your team. Teachers are logging meals and naps, writing parent updates in your program's voice, building lesson plans that align with the state early learning standards, and tracking attendance, incidents, messages, forms, reminders, all while supervising a room full of young children. The good news? Some of the strongest childcare operations in the country are already solving this. Stay with me. And for many great educators, that invisible workload becomes one of the reasons they leave. Programs that they genuinely love. Hi, I'm Hannah Teeter. I run Early Childhood Investigations, a free expert-led professional development webinar series for early childhood educators, produced by Playground. Over the past 16 years, nearly 3 million educators have joined our live and recorded sessions. And after listening to teachers, directors, owners, and trainers, and a lot of early childhood experts across the field, one pattern has become impossible to ignore. Teachers are not just overwhelmed by the children, they're overwhelmed by everything required around the children. Today, I want to share 4 pain points we've been hearing again and again from the field, and what strong operators are doing differently to keep great teachers supported, aligned, and being able to stay. First, we'll look at why teachers are being pulled away from the children. What's actually happening inside classrooms that owners and administrators don't always get to see. Second, we'll talk about how well-meaning owners lose great teachers without realizing it. The everyday leadership habits that can quietly push your strongest staff out of the door, even when your intentions are good. Third, we'll ask the question every operator thinks about. Can raises alone stop teachers from leaving? We'll look at what actually makes teachers stay. And compensation is only one part of the answer. And fourth, we'll break down how strong operators keep the teachers they can't afford to lose, the specific moves programs with lower turnover are making in practice. So let's get into it. Every teacher is being pulled by one thing, the split. Being pulled in 2 directions at once across a 9-hour day, every day. Most teachers still love the work. They love the children. They love the little moments. The child who finally zips up their own coat, the toddler who finds the puzzle piece that fits, the preschooler who proudly uses new words to solve a problem. But it's the split that wears them down. In theory, a teacher's job is to be present with children, lead circle time, comfort the children who misses mom, notice what is changing developmentally. But trust keeps the room safe, warm, and connected. But the modern job description doesn't stop there. Pull up your state's licensing requirements, then add what families now expect from a 2026 childcare experience, and you'll see what teachers are being asked to manage in the same 9 hours. They're logging every meal, nap, diaper change, and incident. They're taking photos for the family. They're writing daily updates for what sounds polished, warm, and aligned with their program's voice. They're tracking the observations against early learning standards. They're building lesson plans for next week. And at pickup, they're expected to greet every family by name with something thoughtful and specific to share. The Center for the Study of Childcare Employment at UC Berkeley has been tracking conditions for early childhood educators since 1999. The Biannual Workforce Index keeps surfacing the same pattern. Working conditions are getting harder, the role has expanded, and more work has been pushed onto teachers without the day expanding. So what does this actually look like inside a classroom? It looks like a teacher comforting a crying child while trying to type a daily report on her phone. It looks like another teacher leading circle time or running through a mental checklist, wondering if she remembered to check in Olivia that morning. It looks like someone staying after, picking up to write a parent message that she didn't get to during the day, so second guessing whether it sounds right. And it looks like a teacher at home on Sunday night rebuilding lesson plans because that week's materials are buried in a folder that no one can find. Now, you might be thinking lots of jobs have competing demands, and that's true, but there's something specific about the childcare classroom that makes that split specifically hard. You can't put the children on pause. You're either present with the children or you're not, and every interruption creates a tiny breaking connection, one that children feel and the teachers. There's a concept in cognitive psychology called attention residue, originally described by Sophie Leroy in 2009. Every time you switch from one task to another, a piece of your attention stays on the first task, even after you've moved on. So when a teacher is pulled in and out of presence 10 times before lunch, they're not just tired from the 10 interruptions. They're working with fragmented attention all day. And across a 9-hour day, every day, that builds up. This is what burnout feels like for teachers, not because they don't love the children, but because the structure of the day keeps pulling them away from the part of the work that drives and gives them purpose. So the lesson here is this: burnout in childcare often comes from being pulled out of the presence with children over and over again. Once you see the day that way, you start asking very different questions about how your program is set up. So what can you do about that this week? Karen Foster Jorgensen, an early childhood leadership consultant, recently joined us on the ECI webinar, The Joyce Equation, shared a simple 15-minute exercise that she uses with teams. Give every teacher a piece of paper. On one side, ask them to write down everything that they do in a day. On the other side, ask them to write down what actually matters in early childhood education. Then hand them a marker and ask them to draw lines between the two. Diaper changing connects to attachment. Wiping noses connects to trust. Meal times connect to independence, routine, and relationships. The work itself doesn't necessarily change, but teachers get to see on paper how that daily task connects back to the purpose that brought them into the field. And it's just as important to surface which tasks feel the most disconnected, duplicative, or draining. The bigger move, though, is to reduce the split wherever you can. Take unnecessary documentation off of the teacher's plate. Simplify parent updates. Make lesson plans easier to access, adapt, and reuse. Build systems so teachers are not recreating the same work on Sunday night. The strongest operators are already doing this. We'll get into those systems in point 4. Point 2, how well-meaning owners are losing teachers without realizing it. This is the chapter I want to spend the most time on because it's the one nobody talks about, and our presenter network surfaces it constantly. The teachers who leave aren't always leaving over the things you'd expect. They're leaving because of how it feels to work under their leader day in and day out. Christina Fecchio joined our webinar series last year on an episode called Leading with Trust, letting go of micromanaging. She spent 5 years in the classroom and 17 on the executive team of a multi-site childcare organization before becoming one of the most sought-after leadership consultants in the field. And she calls what we're talking about the death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's the director who rewrites the parent messages a teacher spent 30 minutes drafting and reposts it as their own. It's the public correction in front of family members at pickup. It's the constant checking in on what a teacher is doing, the second guessing of a classroom decision that they've made 20 times before. It's the staff meeting where they're asked for their opinion and then they're talked over before they've even finished their sentence. None of these things are big things. Each one is a paper cut, but across a year, those paper cuts accumulate into the same feeling. It's that I'm not trusted to do my job here. And that's where the diagnostics gets harder for owners. Most of the time, their behaviors are coming from a good place. You're checking in because you care. You're editing because you have a high bar for what goes out. You're stepping in because you're worried about the family experiences in that moment. Beth Cannon joined our webinar series for an episode called From Burnout to Wellbeing. In that episode, she points to a stat that captures the trap. 80% of CEOs, and specifically 80% of early childhood leaders, say that holding people accountable is their biggest weakness. The way that that shows up in a program is leaders who, instead of having one direct conversation with the teacher, end up doing the work themselves or layering on more roles. That feels like care from the inside, but it feels like control from the outside. And Prina Richards, in her ECI webinar, Coaching Burnout, teachers name the exact moment that spiral starts. The director says to her, I can't say anything, she'll quit, and I need her right now. What sounds like protection of the relationship, Prina says, is actually what pushes her out. Fear of losing the teacher creates the avoidance, but the avoidance is what loses her. So the lesson here, the biggest leadership trap in retention is one that looks like care. Being so worried about losing someone that you stop having real conversations with them and start working around them. That working around reads to teachers as a lack of trust, and not feeling trusted is what most of them eventually leave over. And Karen Foster Jorgensen, in the Joyce Equation webinar I mentioned in point 1, frames the underlying principle as well as anyone I've ever heard. Every policy shapes people. Every interaction shapes culture. Every leadership choice shapes the experience of children, families, and your teams. The well-meaning behaviors we just covered are still leadership choices. They count. They shape who stays and who leaves. So what can you do about it this week? Christina, in Leading with Trust webinar, has a single move you can try tomorrow. Pick one important task that you usually handle yourself and delegate it to a teacher. Use these exact words: "I'm really trusting you to follow through on this." Then just walk away. It feels uncomfortable, and that discomfort is the signal you're stretching a muscle most leaders don't get to stretch enough. After a week, ask the teacher how it went. Don't redo it. Don't critique. Just listen. That's the move you can make tomorrow. The bigger shift, though, is building systems that take the busy work off the leader's plate so that leaders have time to actually lead. The tech and cadence that turns "how are you doing" into a real weekly question instead of an awkward quarterly meeting. The mentor structure means that a teacher has someone listening to them, even on days the director is buried. The infrastructure that lets feedback flow without bottlenecking through one overwhelmed person. We'll get to those systems in point 4. Point 3, can raises alone stop the leaving? Let me start where any honest retention conversation has to start. Teachers in the field are systematically underpaid for the responsibility that they carry every day. According to the most recent study by the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the median hourly wage for childcare workers in this country is $15.41. The lowest 10% earn under $11 an hour. So if your team is below the livable wage floor for your market, getting them above it is the single most important retention move you can make. But here's where the data gets interesting. Karen Foster Jorgensen surveyed 1,200 early childhood educators at a national conference and asked them to rank what makes them stay in their job. Here's what it came back with. Number 1 was open communication. Number 2 was support from their immediate supervisor. Number 3 was feeling that they contributed. Number 4 was an opportunity to learn and grow. Money came in at number 5. And Karen says it directly. People leave high-paying jobs every day because of other factors that they aren't getting fulfilled. The data is worth sitting with. Money is the 5th most important factor in whether teachers stay. The top 4 drivers are exactly the leadership behaviors we just covered in point 2. Open communication, supportive supervision, feeling seen, and room to grow. So, can raises alone stop the leaving? Karen's data says no. Not because pay doesn't matter, it does, but because 4 other things matter more important and above the wage floor, and raises don't address any of them. But there's also a second layer to the pay conversation, and it's what our presenter network keeps pointing back at. Pay keeps mattering even after a program gets the base wages right. It just starts mattering in a different way. Think about it the way you'd think about it at any other job. If you worked somewhere for 3 years, gave it everything, and watched a year after year go by without a raise, without a bonus, without a real conversation about where you're headed, you start asking yourself, what are you still doing there? Even if the base pay was technically fair, the absence of forward motion in your compensation reads as, "We don't see you." Some of them are looking for a step up. That might be a lead teacher role, a director track, something with growth and a salary bump that comes with it. Others are looking for the signal that their dedication is being matched, a meaningful raise, a bonus tied to the work they're putting in, something that reciprocates the efforts that they've been putting and giving to you for years. The CSCCE Workforce Index frames the underlying pattern this way. Lower pay drives teachers into financial insecurity at the bottom of the wage range. Above that range, working conditions and recognition becomes the factors that determine whether anyone stays. Both layers matter and they work together. So here's how to actually think about pay in all of this. Pay your teachers well, and then keep paying them well. The base range is the foundation. The raises, the bonuses, and a visible path to a bigger role are how that foundation keeps showing teachers they're valued over time. Working conditions sit on top of both. The great operators are working on all 3 at the same time. So, what can you do about the recognition piece this week before the raises catch up? Beth Cannon, who we heard from in point 2, shared a framework she uses with leaders in the From Burnout to Wellbeing webinar. She calls it glow, and grow. Every week, you tell every single teacher one specific thing they did well. Not great job, not thanks for everything, something specific. The way you handled the meltdown at drop-off this morning was the difference between a hard day and a manageable one for the whole family. In that same webinar, Beth points to research from Marcus Buckingham, who studied workforce engagement for decades. People need to know that they've done a good job at least once a week. Most teachers go months without it. That's something you can get put in place with your team this week. The bigger move, though, is building the systems that surface those moments without depending on anyone remembering. The systems that document career steps, the systems that turn raises into something teachers can see coming on a calendar instead of when they have to ask for it. We'll get to those systems in point 4. For now, give your team the words this week. Point 4, how any operator can keep the teachers they don't want to lose. If you've been with me through the first 3 points, the question by now is the obvious one. The documentation isn't going anywhere. Recognition won't sustain itself on a leader's memory alone. And the trust gap doesn't close by a director just trying harder on Monday morning. So what are the operators with the lowest turnover actually doing about all of this? The best operators didn't shrink the work. Documentation still matters. Parents still expect daily updates. Regulators still require observations, lesson plans still matter for the kids' development, and none of that is going away. What they reshaped was how all of it gets done. So it stops being forced onto teachers to leave the classroom in their head every time. This is where Playground comes in. The systems we've been teasing across all 3 points are exactly what Playground was built to make possible. That's the reason they sponsor the work that I do, and the reason they brought me in on today's show. Let me show you what those systems actually look like, especially in a classroom. Check-ins, one tap. A parent or a teacher taps the child's photo on the kiosk and attendance is logged automatically. No clipboard, no roster, no writing. Parents' updates can also be AI drafted in your school's voice based on what's already logged during the day. Meals, naps, milestones, the teacher reviews and sends in 30 seconds instead of writing for 5 minutes after pickup. One of the testimonials we hear most on the teacher side is some version of, it takes me 5 seconds to log something that used to take 5 minutes. Lesson plans can be AI generated by room and age group, lined up with your state's early learning framework. The teacher customizes for the week instead of rebuilding from scratch every Sunday night. Teachers tell us this alone saves them more than 3 hours a week, and observations get tapped and logged with the early learning framework tags applied automatically. So when assessment season rolls around, the work is already done. Here's the math an owner should care about. If you save a teacher even 90 minutes a day across logging, communication, lesson planning, and observation work, you've returned 90 minutes a day of presence with the kids. Stack that across a 5-day week and a 40-week school year, and that's 300 hours of presence per teacher per year that wasn't there before. And the time savings don't stop at the teacher. When the documentation engine runs without the leader having to oversee every step of it, that leader gets back the time too. That's the time weekly glow and grow conversation needs. The time that trust building delegation needs. So the lesson here, the work of the operator is to make all of the documentation and communication and planning possible without forcing teachers to leave the room in their head every time. That's the move. So if you've got teachers you don't want to lose, here's what I take from all of this. Pay your team well. That's the foundation, and it never stops mattering. On top of the pay, look at the gap between the job your teachers thought they were signing up for and the job that they're actually doing 9 hours a day. The way to give them their job back is to take the friction out of everything that's pulling them away from it. Pay and work conditions working together. If any of what I've covered today landed for you, the single best next step is actually see what these systems look like in a real program. Playground runs free demos every day with directors and owners running programs, just like yours, about 20 minutes start to finish. They'll walk you through one-tap check-in, the AI drafted parent updates, the AI generated lesson plans, and the recognition and trust systems that pull all of this together. It's the fastest way to go from I get the diagnosis to I can see what fixing it looks like. The link is right at the top of the description. And if you're not quite ready for a demo yet, no problem. Playground has also built a free 10-minute audit you can run on your own program. It's called the Child Care Teacher Retention Audit. Same place in the description. If this kind of thing is useful, hit subscribe. Playground sponsors this channel and the entire ECI webinar series, so we can keep all of it free for the field. The mission we share is simple: making excellent childcare accessible to all. So I hope we see you next week.